Let's talk about Battlefield 1 and single player for a moment, because the last few releases have been disappointing with their single player to varying degrees. The last time that Battlefield was generally considered to have a good single player was with Bad Company 2, and that was only DICE's second effort. Since then we've had Battlefield 3, which was a fairly by-the-numbers, modern-era shooter, Battlefield 4, which was an inconsistent and buggy mess, and Hardline, which was all cops and robbers, and while I actually quite enjoyed it, a lot of people didn't, and it got a very mixed reception. So Battlefield 1 has definitely got an uphill struggle to convince people that it's worth their time to play the single player, and that's even more true when stepping back to the First World War. This is a subject matter that demands that it's given respect and treated properly. And from what I've seen, and from what people will be able to play from tomorrow in the EA Access and Origin Access Play First trials for Xbox One and PC, it actually does a good job of doing this and treating the First World War with respect. So at this point, I have to say that if you're thinking of picking up the game and want to enjoy the single player without spoilers, I would suggest that you stop watching and listening to this video right now, and maybe come back to us once you've done or so. The prologue, titled Storm of Steel, is particularly powerful and effective in my opinion. You have to hold the line and push back against the advancing German soldiers, but it really hammers home one fact. Soldiers died in this war by the millions. The trench warfare of the Western Front had so many particularly grim and utterly futile attacks, and soldiers' lives were just thrown away with a little care. In this prologue you will die. In fact, it's impossible not to do so. You die, you see a name appear on the screen, their year of birth, their year of death, which, funnily enough, is always the same, and then you're given the control of another person in this fight. Whether you're in a tank, whether you're slogging through a muddy hellhole, your life is so fleeting, and that is something that I find so incredibly powerful and well thought out. The other 5 episodes, spanning several missions each, and taking maybe an hour or two to complete, take a very different tack. These follow a single person telling a single story from their time in the war, each in a different theatre of the fight. Through Mud and Blood is the title of the first of these, and it's the one that's featured in the Play First trial. But these 5 episodes, they can be played in any order that you like, they're not attached to one another. Through Mud and Blood puts you in the shoes of Edwards, a fresh young tank driver, drafted into the crew of Big Bess, which is a British Mark V tank, and they're about to head to the Second Battle of Cambrai. It's a huge battle, involving 300 tanks, and it takes place just before the end of the war, literally days. There's cinematics, contrasting characters, huge battles, but there's also lulls in the action and quiet moments. So it's a very different tone to that prologue which had this endless churn of warfare and death, and it's more about this isolated tank crew finding themselves fighting through enemy lines on their own. And you do actually have to get out of the tank and take part in a number of kind of action hero moments where you stealthily take on enemy camps all by yourself. There's more than enough opportunities for you to take a more free-form Battlefield approach, tackling some objectives in different orders, or even just deciding whether to go in guns blazing or take a more softly approach. So from a purely gameplay perspective, it also has that kind of variety. None of the stories in Battlefield 1 are true. They're all fictional, but based within reality and actual events. But that doesn't mean that they can't still hit home and deliver an emotional punch. So if the other episodes can match the prologue and the first story that I played, this is going to be quite easily Battlefield's best single player yet. As always, before we go, I ask you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We've got a fair bit more about Battlefield 1 between now and release, with written hands-on and interviews on the6thAxis.com. Taking a step over to the less serious multiplayer side of things, we will have a look at the big new operations mode and how that works, as well as our full review of the game just before launch. So keep an eye out over the next week or so, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.